Are you ready for the hot seat?
Welcome to In the Hot Seat with the Tenney Group. I'm Spencer Tenney. It's good to be with you. My next guest, not only is he an Oregon Duck fan, but he has exited 6 different companies. He's an M&A advisor. Please welcome Mark Cleveland, Managing Director of Kensington Park Capital and CEO of the Parallel Entrepreneur Podcast and Network. Mark, welcome to the Hot Seat.
Good to be side by side with you, Spencer.
I mean, come on, here we go. So there's so many things I want to cover, sir. But before we jump in and heat things up a little bit, can you take just 30 seconds and give us a little bit of a backdrop for what you're working on today?
Sure. I got excited about parallel entrepreneurship because it's my lived experience, and I'm just going to differentiate. I think we should celebrate entrepreneurs and honor the contribution that they and their teams make to our community, our society, our economy. And then there's the serial entrepreneur that seems to do it again and again and again. And then my lived experience is that I have owned between 2 and 4 companies simultaneously for most of my life. And that's paralleling, I like to say. And there are some superpowers and some things to overcome and challenges in being a parallel entrepreneur that we talk about on the podcast and in the network. And I'm just trying to explore that identity and do that with other parallel entrepreneurs, and I'm having a great time doing it.
Well, I love it. Well, let's jump in right there in terms of your lived experience. So when someone, if they're doing a little LinkedIn research and they start looking at your background, you kind of see these gaps and bopping around. And so it from your lived experience, how did you go from being an Oregon Duck and then kind of immediately transitioning into entrepreneurship? Tell us about what created that pivot.
Well, I have probably always been an entrepreneur. If we were to go into the Wayback Machine, my mom would tell me I was always doing something entrepreneurial at a very young age. I don't think that's everybody's pattern, but for me, I love people. I love creating. And at the University of Oregon, I was trying to put myself through school. So I'm the classic story of at the end of my junior year, I was actually upset with the guy that employed me for my summer and didn't pay me. So I couldn't make tuition on the beginning of my senior year. And so I decided I was going to start a company and compete with him and put him out of business. And not necessarily my most proud moment in terms of motivation, but I was pretty highly motivated. So I started a satellite communications download uplinks. We became the largest satellite dealer in the Pacific Northwest, and I just never looked back. Fast forward, after I retired from Swiftwick, I went back to school at Lipscomb here in Nashville to finish my degree because I like to finish what I start. It always bugged me that I didn't have a degree, but I really got knee deep and totally committed in entrepreneurship. Started a software company after that, sold both those companies, just continued to develop along the path of pursuing my interests. If you look at my resume, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I'm going from a short sea shipping company to a sock manufacturing company to a bicycle manufacturing company. Yeah, it all made sense at the time because it was something I wanted to learn and explore, and I wanted to push my edges and grow in an area that I just didn't have expertise in. So I found that when I would go from industry to industry with some competence in some function like finance or leadership or, approaches to innovation, I could import all those skills into an industry I didn't know anything about. And it turned out to be a competitive advantage because I didn't have any shackles on. I didn't know what I couldn't do. I didn't know what I shouldn't have to do or want to do. And I just did what I thought made sense. And if I can connect with a customer in that environment, that makes sense.
It's funny. I tell many of our clients that are beginning to prepare for an exit that, there's always some anxiety. Like, this is all I know. Like, I don't know what I would do if I wasn't doing transportation and logistics. And to your point, I'm like, believe me, if you can do this, those skills are transferable to anywhere, like anywhere. But I want to back up because you said something that I think is really relevant for a lot of folks. I mean, here you are, 20-ish years of success, multiple companies. Why did you care about whether or not you had a degree? Because in terms of success, you'd already kind of surpassed so much of what our culture, thinks about as success. Why was that important to you?
Well, I had a leadership role in a very significant company called Truckload Management Inc. We were the operators and developers and managers of the Trip Pack network in transportation. You know, I spent a lot of time building that company and the software capabilities, and I had 56 people reporting to me that were all highly degreed, educated software people. It just kind of bugged me that when we got acquired later by Affiliated Computer Services out of Dallas, I'm now a Fortune 500 guy. And I'm running a division of a publicly traded company. And I think I probably might have had some imposter syndrome at work. And when I finally found the time, I just wanted to, like I say, finish what I started. But also, I put myself in a position. I went back to school so that I could learn from young single mothers that were putting themselves through night school. I didn't do the online thing. I went physically to class. The yellow ribbon veteran returning from service and trying to get, their education advancement. There was such a wide variety of people in that environment that I could literally just learn from the diversity of all of these other people's experiences. I found it really quite rewarding. My daughters were like, "Dad, what are you doing? You're a guest lecturer there already. What does that matter?" It's a fair question. And I thought, well, it feels good to complete things for me, and
Yeah,
I needed to do it.
I think that's a good answer right there. Um, I'm excited for a number of different reasons about this interview because I think you have a lot to offer. Many of our audience, most of who are entrepreneurs, who are building value within companies. But I do think that you have a very unique skill set. Some have this, a lot don't, and then kind of go into that parallel entrepreneur mindset. So, some of this I'm sure was just kind of like not a thing for you, and then probably later on you realize, okay, this is different. That I can do all these things at the same time. What have you observed about yourself that has allowed you to operate multiple companies at a high level at the same time?
Well, your background is a radio controlled airplane design, engineering, layout of an aircraft. And I bought from a private equity company, a company called Hobby Lobby here in Nashville. And it was one of the nation's oldest standing brands and most successful manufacturer, distributor of radio controlled airplanes, cars, and trucks. At the same time, I was the CEO of Swiftwick, a sock manufacturing company. They don't have anything to do with one another at all, right? Except I really understood what it was to be an excellent third-party logistics company, thanks to all my experience at Jubitz Corporation and working with trucking companies and DAT and TripPack. And boy, that company had a really excellent pick, pack, and ship system and 10,000 SKUs and little parts that were expensive and expert employees that were passionate about what they did. And a real significant brand challenge. We shared a brand with Hobby Lobby stores out of Oklahoma City and a lot of complex issues in that way. So I set about to acquire a company that I thought was an opportunity in something that was interesting to me. And I merged. Swiftwick was growing so fast, we could hardly get anything shipped out. It was nuts. So we literally just added another 675 SKUs to the warehouse. And that same volume that we were getting from shipping globally and internationally, we could apply to socks. So one shipment was also Swiftwick socks. The other one was a radio controlled airplane. The disciplines are all the same. and doing what you say you're going to do for the customer and freeing up employee creativity, they're all the same disciplines. And I feel like what made me feel confident I could do it was that I was just fascinated by the processes and committed to frontline decision making, where people who were closer to the customer than me, or closer to the hobby than me, or better pilots than I am, could really express themselves. So I feel like I'm a manager of a playground, and I'm inviting talent into that experience and trying to stay out of their way. Um, Not You wind up experiencing failures at different companies simultaneously, and you're experimenting with a technology here or a process there, and each company is in a different place, and you can iterate faster. And so I go spend 10 hours a week on this company and 20 hours a week on this company, and the other one doesn't need my attention at all. And I think it's about time management, and probably the core value of hiring people who are hungry, humble, and smart.
I think that's good stuff right there. Why do you think, you mentioned experimentation? A lot of entrepreneurs or founders struggle with this because it's just, failing, right? Like, and it's a function of like they kind of stay within a lane, and a lot of things that prevent them from growing or expanding or creating value just has to do with the resistance of failing in some respects and experimentation. Why do you think that is? Why do you think other entrepreneurs kind of resist that? Because obviously in your case, that's been kind of the formula for actually creating value and learning.
I think I'm committed to lifelong learning, and therefore I cannot stand still in one classroom for the rest of my life. I think that might be a good metaphor. People don't like failing. Our society, particularly if you're a leader, and an entrepreneur is a leader of people. We set the weather in the company. And, if it's sunny and we got control of that and everything's great, but when the storm comes, we have to be calm and be able to navigate that. There's a lot of really fantastic leadership skills that entrepreneurs develop. They're either born with it, they're forced to develop it. But if you're successful, you wind up learning how to relax, and learning that the learning experience itself is the most valuable, and learning how to ask better questions. So I had to learn that I didn't have all the answers. My people did. And if I asked them intelligent questions and shut up, we would all be more successful. I think really successful entrepreneurs are great listeners, and they're listening to the market. They're listening to what their customers have to say, and they're listening to what the employee or the contractor, the team has to say, and they're acting. They're making decisions, and you just can't make every decision correctly. So you just have to get comfortable with constant adjustments, because nothing is actually a failure. Nothing.
Yeah.
They're all great lessons. And
Well,
I'm just not going to compare myself to anybody else. I'm just going to go do the best I can.
yeah, and get busy failing and as fast as possible. I love that. I think what's really interesting is that you can see that as a discipline of parallel entrepreneurship. If you've got 3 or 4 different companies and you're, experimenting across broad business functions in parallel, like just aggregating all of that experience over a long period of time, you can see like how powerful that is, and how how valuable that knowledge base becomes across multiple different industries. So very interesting. Let me transition a little bit. I teased your 6 startups and exits from companies. Something that our audience is very attuned to. They want to know about. What would you say are some of the things that when people are preparing for an exit, what do they get wrong? Like good intentions, what do they get wrong about trying to maximize an exit?
Well, that's a great question. Most of the time, we hold on too long in some death grip battle with optimism and are not practical and are not accepting the reality of whatever the business environment and performance and results are. So I've held on way too long thinking I'm going to make it, So knowing objectively what it is that you want is the most important thing. And looking at the business and asking, is this business paying me to own it? And am I getting what I want out of this company? From me, I'd get to a point where I'd learned, I was pretty expert in textiles. I got to become fairly expert in global supply chain management. I started a short sea tug on barge, container on barge, blue water shipping company. Like has nothing to do with nothing that I've been doing, except I acted like a trucker on the high seas and we just disrupted the marketplace. It worked because we had guts. It worked because we knew what we were trying to do. And those exit moments, you have to really know why am I doing this still? And do I want to do it? So I think what they get wrong is exiting too late by the time they're tired, or the market is turned on them and now they're exiting for the wrong reasons. So I think that's one. And I think the other thing that is important is having your data room ready right now. You should have a data room going 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, real-time snapshots of your business so that you're not trying to make a decision to go to market someday or an opportunity comes in the window and you're just not ready. So being ready to exit is about having your KPIs and your financials and your disciplines and your processes and your team, not documented because you're trying to get an MBA, but like really thought through and something that you could train somebody on. And so someone's going to come in and say, this is a business with a sustainable, repeatable process and a formula and a business model that I understand. And look at all this data that I can just validate against. And I'm comfortable now moving forward to acquire you. That conversation happens faster than you think. And the no happens in split seconds. So when someone is looking at your data room and it's not good, the no happens in split seconds. So you might as well focus on your data room.
It's funny that you mentioned that. We spoke about this recently, just as a kind of a risk mitigation. It's like, it's not realistic as an owner for you, for your emotional readiness. Like sometimes you're kind of like figuring that out on the way to the close. Like if it's their first time, they're kind of in faith walking forward. So from a stewardship standpoint, I'm always just saying, hey, you have to do the basic disciplines to at least keep the option in play. So, your recommendation about the deal room, I think that's such a critical deal because all that does is just insulate the opportunity to give you enough time to entertain it. Because if you don't that's like table stakes. If you don't do that, you like to your point, the buyer's not going to stick around long enough to make an offer or even entertain what's going on. So that's I really appreciate you recommending that basic discipline because I think that can help a lot of people. And the good thing about that is once you set up that discipline, it might be a little lift to kind of get it going, but maintaining that's nothing. Like on a go forward. But the value that it brings, just if you want to have a quick conversation, you eliminate all the disruption to your organization and people like trying to on the fly fire drill, try to pull that information and disrupting, creating a rumor mill about what's going on. Like you don't need to do any of that. Just create an ongoing process as a part of standard business. And that's just a great way to manage opportunity.
Well, and you talked about the emotional journey that an entrepreneur is on. We are all on an emotional journey. And you got to embrace it and you're going to learn something from it. People hold this information tightly because they don't really know how to share it with their employees. So I would just consider when it comes to the data room, who's your audience? By the time they get into a consultative support relationship with a professional like you so that they can focus on running their business while you're running a process, by the time they get there, they think that the audience is the acquirer or the strategic partner. The audience has been your employees and your team all along. I think if you just reframe it with, we have a data room going because this is how we manage the business, nobody's surprised. And you can also manage access to that with the technologies available today to be secure
Oh, yeah.
and have a command of the program.
100%. Let me transition a little bit, Mark. I was reading. We were joking about your LinkedIn profile, which you've been killing it lately. I was telling Galen, our producer, I was like, maybe I need to be a little bit more involved in the community. I'm looking at Mark's stuff. What's good? Like, what he's got going on. Tell me about that. Where does that passion come from? I know obviously there can be a business case for that, but I don't really sense that. I kind of sense that you just like it, in terms of some of the groups that you serve and involve. So where does that passion come from?
Well, you do the same thing. Actually, you don't underestimate yourself. You're building a Tuesday group, and you've been communicating and building in with this podcast with your relationships. It's about giving without the expectation of getting anything in return. And you just de-link the idea that I'm going to do something because you're going to do something in response. Buy my product, hire me as an advisor. I do what I'm passionate about, which usually starts with, I like people. I just do. People are nutty and crazy, and I learn something from everybody. And it's just a great way to walk through life, I think. So I've been involved as a lifelong Rotarian. I'm involved in the Nashville Technology Council. I'm involved in things where I think I can make a contribution. And I'm pretty much an on or off guy. I'm either 100% or I'm not, so I tend to make decisions that are like full commitment or no commitment. Just because half commitment is a gray area that I don't understand. That's my personality, but thank you for reflecting that. I work with a lot of quality people who also care about their community, from the chamber to, a group of CEOs that gets together once a month and just provides support for the things that we're going through. This is about a human journey. It's about companionship. And the outcomes, you don't get to control all of them. You can just, give it your best shot and accept the reality of whatever it is, make a decision.
I love it. Hey, I got a couple more questions for you, Mark, which this has been fantastic. Galen might have shared this with you, but we have our second annual Tenney Legacy Summit coming up. This is exclusive to our past clients who have had a liquidity event, and we just noticed that there was, an opportunity to kind of meet some needs, in the years that follow a liquidity event. Some people jump right back into entrepreneurship, and some folks kind of struggle to find a rhythm for whatever that next thing is going to be. And I'm thinking about your experience and having done this multiple times. What advice could you give to some of our clients that, maybe who have exited in the last 3 to 5 years? Maybe they're doing some additional business investing, or, maybe they're in retirement. But what advice would you give them as they kind of make sense of this new season of life where they're not surrounded by people and have great responsibilities right now? But, maybe they still want to be useful. They still want to be impactful. How can they do that?
Well, I think the communities that we live in are in great need of leadership, because they're in decay, because we've exported the manufacturing base, because there's an educational gap, maybe a socioeconomic problem, depending on where you are. I think that mentoring and getting engaged with younger people, to just speak from my own perspective, I enjoy younger friends because they teach me something, and I love to offer them whatever guidance they're willing to listen to. I think that it's probably pretty good to take a break after you've sold your company. I wasn't very good at that. I'm trying to get better at it. I was sort of step from one to the next, but I bet you if you stop and really think about it and you've had your exit, the number didn't actually matter that much. You were already generally successful, or nobody's buying your business. And, you already know how to organize and motivate people and galvanize against a mission. You know how to serve a customer. So I think you have all the skills. These clients that you're talking about, they're smart. They got you involved. They got a coach. They got somebody to help them through that process. I wished I'd have had more coaching when I was going through my own, learning everything the hard way. But those people are leaders, and every community, whether it's a church community or the firemen in your neighborhood that are looking to raise money, really small acts of kindness are a big win from me, my life experience. And if I had to advise somebody on how to go take, this next step, get involved in learning something new, jump into AI like your life depends on it, and experiment. Now's the time. You have some freedom, a little less pressure, and there's a hungry community out there that wants your leadership.
No, I think that will be a message that is welcomed across our network very much. All right, last question, Mark. I'm looking at that painting here. A little bit of a wild card question here. I'm looking at that painting behind you. What does it mean, and why do you care about it?
Wow, what a fabulous question. I collect art. I think the world is full of art, and there are some artists that I'll buy more than one painting from. This is Sergei Gradenko, and it's about doing what you love. So this is one of his themes. In the end, we're all looking, whether we're tall or black or male or female, it all looks like the skull when you're done. And across your eyes, do what you love while you're here. And then this is just multi-dimensional, do what you love reminder. And I know that one of the reasons it's been easy for me to do what I do is because I love the people and the company and the challenge and problem solving. So it's difficult to slow down, but that's also important too. Just keep doing what you love with your time. That's what that means to me.
Well, sir, you are living and loving in full color, and we sure do appreciate you sharing your time with us here in the hot seat. That's going to do it for us, sir. We will see you next time.